A thread by Carlos Osuita. Let's tell our terrorist buddies what they're doing to themselves. Don't worry, they won't listen. From FoxNews.com, Georgia State Patrol headquarters vandalized during protest, fireworks thrown. They attack a Georgia State Patrol headquarters and write, "Death to America," with 2 Ks on it. Now they've tied themselves to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force. Uh-oh. Everybody laughed when Donald Trump did this. From CNN.com, Trump designates elite Iranian military force as a terrorist organization. We even had a giant flatus from an egghead explaining why only said egghead knows what's really going on. From Brookings.edu, what both Trump and his critics get wrong about the IRGC terrorist designation. From the Brookings article, quote, "The announcement has generated an entirely predictable paroxysm of histrionic rhetoric from all sides, but it is almost certain to accomplish nothing more substantial than that." Wrong, silly Suzanne Maloney. Trump did that so he could bring down all Iran-funded movements like Antifa. Duh. The Trump Department of Justice has spent years identifying leftists with connections to Iran. From Mediaite, Lara Logan, China and Iran and Russia funding Antifa protests. From the Mediaite article, quote, "In light of Attorney General William Barr's statement that foreign actors have hijacked the civil unrest that has followed the killing of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police, Fox Nation host Lara Logan told Fox and Friends that Barr was referencing China, Iran, and possibly Russia." From Lara, "I have been open to various sources and counterterrorism sources and other threats throughout the law enforcement community. And the obvious suspect that they point to are China and, of course, Iran as well, and some of them Russia too." End quote. I've known this for over 10 years. Saddam Hussein's intelligence service, the Mukhabarat, met with leftist anti-war protesters, and some activists such as Code Pink had connections to Al-Qaeda. The problem is that nobody has ever had the guts to deal with this. The reason the Georgia State Police didn't defend their headquarters was to allow Antifa to prove that they're terrorists. The headquarters was not vandalized. It was assaulted and partially firebombed. Richard Grinnell was asked why everything is taking so long. He said, "They're building a hell of a case." That is, the Justice Department. Antifa is not loosely organized. You can see what the feds and the federally assisted cops are doing. They're goading the leaders to move to the front of the crowd, and then they snatch them. DNA is harvested. Why? To match up the DNA left behind after a meeting between Antifa and Iranian agents. Now, don't expect a parade of orange jumpsuits. That's symbolism. You don't want your enemy to know what you know. Omar al-Baghdadi and his successor were the last members of the Islamic State killed. Do you know how al-Baghdadi was killed? He watched CNN and believed everything he saw on it. He thought we'd betrayed the Kurds and fled Syria. Do you see why Trump does things the way he does? All warfare is based on deception. Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Antifa is a global terrorist organization with ties to Iran. Everyone who funds them is in deep, you know what. The FBI arrested Ghislaine Maxwell when it was time. Epstein knew nothing. Maxwell knows everything. Federal law enforcement and the armed forces have never operated at full capacity on U.S. soil. Now they are. Last night was hell on earth for me. Cluster munitions for 7 hours straight. Now they're starting up again. But Somebody carried out tons of raids last night. Houses everywhere are sealed and have yellow do not cross tape all over them. Perfect night to take out the garbage. They weren't arresting people for fireworks. Did you see this? From TheGuardian.com, Ghislaine Maxwell to appear in court as fresh details of arrest emerge. From the article, quote, more than 20 armed agents and police are reported to have taken part in the early morning operation on Thursday that led to her being handcuffed at her secluded rural retreat in New Hampshire and taken into custody. Officers were said to have broken down the front door at the 156-acre property, which is called Tucked Away, end quote. Epstein's arrest? Quote, a task force of federal agents and New York City police officers met the plane at Teterboro Airport and took Epstein into custody, law enforcement officials said. From CNBC.com, billionaire Jeffrey Epstein due in court after sex trafficking arrest. He was just a penis. And he killed himself. You have no idea how to hang yourself. He tied the bedsheet around his neck, knelt, jumped into the air, and came down hard enough to black out and fracture his hyoid bone. He had no defensive wounds. Nobody is strangled without a fight. He was a big guy, a gym bunny. His goal was to die unconscious, and he did. Do you even know who Ghislaine Maxwell is? The daughter of Robert Maxwell. From FoxChronicle.com, Robert Maxwell review, the meteoric rise and fall of a media baron. Maxwell was without question involved in military intelligence, but because he was at least a triple agent, X hires him, he defects to Y, and then he defects back to X or goes to Z without telling Y. Neither the FBI nor the British MI6 could determine what he was doing. He had contacts in the Czech, Israeli, British, and Russian governments. Maxwell and Ghislaine had an unusually close relationship. He named his yacht Lady Ghislaine, and she was seen cuddling up to him even as an adult. She called him my daddy. Ghislaine knew everybody her father did, and she was connected to American and European government figures. Believe me, she was not arrested for being a madam. All of you were distracted. I wasn't. I was waiting for the hammer to come down. Turns out it's a whole bunch of hammers, sledgehammers. Did Q tell you anything about Ghislaine's connections to intelligence organizations? If not, time to stop reading it. Addendum. Don't get all pissy, folks. I'm just trying to get you to think for yourselves, like you know who. Check it out. Aircraft, a convoy carrying 24 FBI, NYPD, New Hampshire cops, and a gang task force. Massive firepower. And NYPD, from NewYorkPost.com, Ghislaine Maxwell arrest armed agents, spy planes used to take down Epstein, girlfriend. Addendum 2. Follow the family doesn't mean anything. So I take it that nobody ever thought about Ghislaine Maxwell knowing about terrorism funding, and that's why she was arrested at the height of all this. The planned insurrection began, got quashed, and she got snatched.